Since humans have existed, there have been gatherings of people sleeping in the same room, otherwise known as sleepovers. But since the dawn of girlhood, there have been slumber parties. What is the difference, you may ask? If sleepovers as a whole are gender neutral, then a slumber party is the girlified version of the same thing, loaded with customs, conventions, and culture. It still involves coming together in a room to sleep, but that is just one qualifier among many, ranging from loose suggestions to crucial traditions that upgrade a boring old sleep gathering into a traditional slumber party. Pajamas, chick flicks, gossip, makeovers, there's a certain look and expectation that comes with a slumber party, and it doesn't have to be fulfilled, but you'll probably have way more fun if it's as close to the idealized version as possible. That idealized version and the term slumber party itself first emerged in the 1940s. Again, the concept of girls sleeping over wasn't anything new, but this was when all of the associated girly cliches began to take shape. These paper dolls from 1943 cover the most obvious bases. A group of girls that are specifically teen age, dolled up, wearing colorful and varied pajamas, and looking like they're about to have a good old-fashioned pillow fight. I don't know why they're all wearing shoes though. That part's kind of weird. This picture encapsulates the wholesome, feminine fun waiting to be enjoyed from the comfort of your bedroom, and that's what slumber parties are all about. Examples across toys, movies, and records over the next few decades portrayed the same staple features: pajamas, friendship, and just general hanging out. You didn't need much to have a successful sleepover. This Karen has a slumber party Dolly Darling's doll from the 60s comes with the expected era-appropriate essentials: a record player and record, playing cards, a phone and phone directory, cosmetics, and of course, her pajamas. Beyond direct merchandise, sleepovers were also featured in advertisements for food products, because the right snacks were also very important to a successful gathering. The 70s and 80s produced even more snack ads, dolls, and sleepovers shown in media, but it wasn't until the 90s that the commercialization of slumber parties reached its peak. Using the amount of media and merchandise as a metric, the 90s and 2000s were ripe with sleepovers and slumber party culture. The general girls gathering to sleep concept was still the same, but now you did need more than just a pack of cards and some sodas. That's not to discount the popularity of slumber parties in the decades leading up to the 90s, but the commercialization of the whole thing, from designated paraphernalia like sleeping bags and pajamas, to trends and traditions shown in pop culture, led to a rise in slumber parties as a commodity. Now there was a blueprint that was promoted so that the standard could be sold, and without it, you'd risk your party being incomplete, and all the companies behind your favorite products being unable to get in on the fun too. It was the trendy thing to do if you had friends and a need to sleep, as quintessentially girly as makeup, gossiping, and shopping, and I personally ate it right up. I watched the movies, I had the toys, and almost every time I would play with my Bratz Slumber Party line doll, I would make them all have a sleepover, because that was the most fun and obvious choice. Even though introducing a blueprint or guidelines into something that's supposed to be fun sounds like it would make it worse, I think that pop culture portrayals also expanded what a sleepover could be, rather than just what it should be, and created connections through tradition. But there is somewhat of a difference between what traditions all of the movies and marketing sell as sleepover culture, aka big sleepover, versus what's actually important at a realistic sleepover, aka slumber party law. A lot of these things weren't even specifically limited to or by girly sleepovers, but they still often made an appearance and were part of the romanticized cliche. While movies and TV show adaptations are the most common examples, sleepover propaganda, or slumberganda, I know, that name is terrible, is not only limited to what you can watch. A lot of the encouragement from Big Sleepover is slightly more subtle, or at least tends to find you instead of you finding it. Flip through a magazine and it's full of sleepover photo shoots and stories. Go shopping at Claire's or Justice and be met with racks of sleepover-themed accessories and pajamas. Even just going to the Scholastic Book Fair means you'll probably come across multiple books about sleepovers, from junior novels to guides and journals. The journals are basically sleepover diaries, designed to be filled with party details and the secrets of your slumber party, which is exactly what this one says, one that I have kept for almost 20 years from my 9th birthday party. And yes, if you couldn't tell from just the general design, it was from Justice. And since I know you're nosy, I do reveal all of its contents in a video on my Patreon that's linked in the description. The guidebooks, separate from journals, were filled with party ideas and tips, with suggestions for themes, decor, crafts, and games. It sounds helpful until you actually read one of them and it's just like, eat candy! Snack ideas? Make a salad. I guess not all sleepover guides were created equally, but I still lived for these things as a kid. Just getting to read about the potential slumber parties I could be having was almost as exciting as having a real one. I used to sneak into my sister's room just to read this specific Pajama-rama book that she had from the book fair. Looking at some of the pages now, it wasn't actually that great either. Put M&Ms on a spoon and then try not to let them fall off. Put a walnut on your foot, don't let it fall off. Oranges. But I still treated it like some sacred sleepover Bible. I also liked that it was shaped like a pillow and soft like a pillow. It came in a pillowcase and smelled like lavender. I think I mostly just liked the sensory experience now that I'm thinking about it, but I did still open it and read the pages, not just smell and touch it. No matter what all the books say though, when it comes time to actually show up to a sleepover, all you really need to do to prepare is pack your bag. You can bring whatever you want, but pajamas, a pillow, a gift if there's a birthday, and perhaps a sleeping bag are all essential, the combination of which will all be your means of self-expression for the night. Sleeping bags do tend to be more popular with kids, and for that reason, there are a lot of kid-oriented sleeping bags in endless styles. It's not just what you'll sleep on, it's about making a statement. Whatever is most important or personal to you or just matches your vibe the best can be printed on the front of your sleeping bag, blown up to the size of a small flag for the whole sleepover to see. Movies, cartoons, toys, musicians, princesses, they've got it all. Sleeping bags also seem to be more used in earlier decades, growing in popularity circa the 1970s when Big Sleepover took a look at these things that were generally intended for camping and then promptly co-opted, girlified, and rebranded them so that now they weren't just for a tent, but for your friend's living room floor. They were newly printed in cute patterns and specifically depicted in sleepovers for sleepovers. Options in the 80s got a little more wild, with brands, media, and other IPs to express everything from your favorite show, to your favorite food, to your favorite box of crayons. And you can still find a ton of 90s and early 2000s sleeping bag examples floating around at secondhand stores, which usually followed the same themes but matched the era's pop culture. My go-tos as a kid were these specific strawberry shortcake and Bratz sleeping bags. I remember staring at their huge gross lips in the dark while trying to fall asleep. How soothing. Similarly, pajamas are also a direct expression of your personal style. PJs have long since been marketed as essentially nighttime fashion, something not just for comfort but for style, even though you're just gonna sleep in it. Thanks, patriarchy. But Big Sleepover turns pajamas from boring sleepwear into party attire, a cute outfit that all your friends will see and comment on, making it all the more important for it to be just as fashionable. Bonus points if you and your friends are all wearing matching jammies. So now that you're all dressed, have your sleeping bag, and you've arrived, what do you actually do at a sleepover? Well, that mostly depends on how far into the night you are, your age, and depending on who your source is, the slumberganda or actual slumberers. Of all the conventions perpetuated by Big Sleepover, the iconic slumber party pillow fight has to be one of the most contrived. Despite being unrealistic, it's weirdly one of the most common and consistent cliches included in media depictions. Everyone's laughing and smiling, holding big fluffy pillows, and it's less of a fight and more of just a friendly tussle. And, of course, the piece de resistance. It'll almost always end with a pillow exploding into a rain of feathers that fly through the air like slumber party snow. But almost none of that ever actually happens. Don't get me wrong, I've definitely had pillow fights before, but they rarely occurred at sleepovers, and even when they did, they were not all they were cracked up to be. There was a lot more prepubescent aggression than glee and whimsy, which almost always led to some girl crying because she got slammed too hard in the face. And there were definitely no feathers because no one sleeps with Victorian-era goose-down-filled pillows anymore. I guess the practical answer as to why Big Sleepover loves pillow fights is that they're one of the most succinct ways to portray a slumber party, cramming all of the core aspects into a single scene. The pajamas, the bedding, the pillows, girls are just being girly and laughing, and the feathers are the cherry on top that make it all look like a fantasy. If you've ever had an actual media-worthy and notably non-violent pillow fight at a slumber party, I'd love to hear how you've fulfilled the prophecy. I think I'm gonna add have one where all the feathers fly everywhere to my bucket list. A lot of media-depicted slumber parties also include some sort of dancing scene that's a lot like the iconic pillow fights, except there are no pillows, there's no dialogue, and everyone is just kinda vibing. I'm definitely not the authority on all sleepovers ever, but this does seem like another looks good on TV type of scene rather than being a super popular pastime. That's not to say that I've never played music and or danced at sleepovers before, but having such a dedicated, scheduled, no-talking dance break time just seems so funny and unrealistic. So I guess it's right in the middle between slumberganda and real-life occurrence. Something Big Sleepover often fails to show is the copious amounts of games that accompany any decent slumber party. It's one of the most free-form parts of the night since there are still conventions, but a party game can really be anything and as loose or structured as you want it to be. Traditional board and card games are always a classic choice, especially anything easy to play with as few rules as possible, like Uno or BS. Though if you want something more on theme, Big Sleepover has got you covered. The 80s and 90s produced some especially girly board games that, while not exclusively for sleepovers, definitely still fit the vibe. Girl Talk, Mall Madness, and Dream Phone are the epitome of girly stereotypes turned into board games, and that's not a bad thing. They're really creative and fun. As a child of the mid-2000s, multiplayer video games were always my preferred party activity, especially if they were titles on the cutting-edge new console of 2006, the Wii. Just Dance, Mario Kart, Mario Party, Wii Sports, Cooking Mama, or even just sitting around and making me's for all of your friends had endless potential and replayability. And space for arguments when somebody eventually lost. It's not my fault I'm really good at Coconut Mall, Rebecca. Stop crying just because you came in second. Similar to the genre of girly board games, there was an attempt to make girly party video games too, added into the mix of all the other terrible shovelware out there. But fortunately, the gender-neutral versions won out in the end because they were already well-established and actually good, as opposed to such titles as Action Girls Racing and Imagine Party Babies with a Z. If you're not into games, for some reason, but instead want to get a little creative, delving into beauty products or otherwise getting dolled up is especially perpetuated by Big Sleepover, whether it's through sleepover-specific products or just insisted upon in movies. Even without the slumberganda, though, plenty of girls tend to gravitate to beauty activities naturally anyway, since most sleepovers are likely to have any combination of hair ties, nail polish, makeup, skincare, and other miscellaneous beauty items to mess around with. Braiding hair, dyeing hair, painting nails, and makeovers can all be self-applied or done to and with your friends as a little bonding experience. Do you trust your closest friends near your eyeballs with an eyelash curler? Or a burning hot flat iron near your forehead? Might as well find out and see what could possibly go wrong. Keep things as low-key and relaxing or as glam and ridiculous as you want, taking plenty of pictures afterwards of your masterpieces. There's also a common big sleepover trope related to not just skincare, but the specific idea of pampering, or otherwise having a spa experience. Not just nail painting, but full-scale manicures. Not just moisturizing, but luxurious skincare and facials. And a face mask in that particular shade of green, cucumbers over the eyes, and lounging in a bathrobe all make up the default spa day ensemble that often carries over into sleepover spa depictions too. Of course, the cucumbers are optional, and your face masks or creams or whatever you use can be any color you want. Big emphasis on whatever you use, because while the skincare industry has grown a lot in the past few decades with lots of expensive, fancy products, when I was a kid, my skincare would be whatever DIY recipe I pulled out of a magazine. Putting a potion of random condiments and spice rack finds onto your face and or hair is both a girly rite of passage and even more fun at a slumber party. The big sleepover premise of having a calm, relaxing time with your friends is a cute idea and all, but it never really turns out that way. And if makeup isn't your thing, just make something else up. And turn any other creative hobby or craft into a group activity. Scrapbooking, crocheting, painting, baking, whatever you want. At one birthday party I went to as a kid, we all decorated pillowcases together with fabric markers and patches, which is apparently a big sleepover tradition that dates back all the way to the 50s, according to this ad at least. Maybe it's unsurprising since I kept that old justice journal, but I actually still have that pillowcase too. Only because I'm sentimental and not because it turned out particularly well. I clearly didn't put much effort into this thing, with its single flower patch, single drawing of also a flower, the only writing that's kinda hard to make out but it's just signatures from the other girls, and then all that blank space. What a fun craft. Oh, and there's this part where I wrote Hannah Montana but then crossed it out to be edgy because I was too old to like her anymore. But between you and me, I did still secretly like her. Regardless of how it looks, though, the memory of making this thing is what really counts. Maybe the real pillowcases were the friends we made along the way? Equally creative and even more interactive are prank calls, another activity that's not exclusive only to girls or sleepovers, but it still makes an appearance at most slumber parties because it's just what kids tend to gravitate to when they're bored: harassing people. A prank call is also entirely what you make it. Who ends up on the receiving end and what you harass them with depends on how imaginative and or annoying you feel like being. Growing up in the US, *67 was the go-to prefix I'd use when making a prank call because it would supposedly hide your caller ID. To this day, I still don't even know if that actually worked, but it was still very important to dial every time anyway because you couldn't risk getting found out. There. Now with your number hidden, your close personal friends who know your voice and who probably knew you were at a sleepover will have no idea who's on the other end. It's genius. Of course, you could call any number you wanted, whether you knew who it was or not. Ask embarrassing questions to your friend's crush, call in stupid pizza orders, put on any number of fake voices as if a terrible British accent could disguise the fact that you still sound like a 12-year-old child. The phone is your oyster. And when that random pizza place across the country actually calls you back and leaves an angry voicemail on the answering machine,
"Hey, tiny children who keep harassing me at work, please stop asking if we can put spaghetti on a pizza. Call again, I'm gonna call the cops or something."
it'll actually kind of scare you. But when retelling the story, it'll morph into a thrilling and humorous tale of almost getting sent to juvie. Yeah, we're so rebellious and really did that. Kids are so dumb. At some point before, after, or during all of these varied activities, you're probably gonna get hungry, and it's time to bust out the snacks. Whether you'll actually accept the suggestions of those advertisements for the best sleepover foods doesn't really matter. To qualify as a good snack, whatever you're eating just needs to be junk food that can easily be poured into a bowl. Chips, candy, and especially popcorn all make regular appearances in both real and idealized slumber parties. And don't forget the cake if there's a birthday. Or if there's not and you just want to get a little crazy. I'm a big believer in anytime cakes. The kind that you can eat regardless of if there's something to celebrate. As long as it's shareable and terrible for you, your sleepover can have whatever you want. But both big sleepover and slumber party law are not so lenient when it comes to the holy grail of party provisions, the humble pizza. There are always exceptions, of course, but it's just the easy go-to choice that makes the night feel complete. And equally, if not more important, you'll need some soda or other caffeinated beverages to keep the party going all night long. Watching a movie is probably the #1 most mandated activity in sleepover law, right behind actually sleeping. It's the perfect way to get everyone together, wind down, and eventually bring the night to a close. Like everything in sleepover culture though, it has its conventions and the experience can vary, because once you've piled up the blankets and popped some popcorn, there is the choice of what movie to watch. And how the rest of the night will go if you don't fall asleep while watching will depend entirely on which one you pick. Big Sleepover tends to suggest watching a chick flick, which is basically any movie that's rooted in romance, melodrama, friendship, or female empowerment. To make such a daunting choice a little easier, before streaming service categories were a thing, some DVDs would come in dedicated slumber party packs with movies that perfectly fit the theme. Got Matilda and Annie for younger girls. This one's got all of the It Girl 2000s classics. And then there's... oh, My Girl is an interesting choice to brand specifically as a slumber party pick. But if you feel like crying in your sleeping bag to Macaulay Culkin or any other sad movie, that's perfectly acceptable. Or you could go the total opposite route and watch a horror movie instead if you wanted to scare yourself into staying awake all night. A movie that I always associate with sleepover culture, for obvious reasons, is the appropriately named 2004 sleeper hit, Sleepover. Okay, it wasn't really a sleeper hit, I just wanted to make a pun, but they do sleep over and complete all the regular slumber party duties in a montage that just perfectly captures every cliche of the genre, like checking off a bullet point list. It's so 2004. I love it. This movie absolutely had a lot to do with my insatiable philosophy of must sleep over when I was younger. All the other examples in pop culture helped too, of course, but I must have first watched this movie at the ripe age of like 5, and that was it for me. My expectations were set. Call it propaganda from Big Sleepover, but I was thoroughly and easily convinced that this was the height of girlhood and the finest entertainment. Even though no one ever wants the night to end, settling in somewhere cozy to sleep can also just as often devolve into being its own activity. Gathering with everyone in the designated sleep area, a big mess of sleeping bags and pillows and blankets, maybe some mattresses and couches thrown into the mix, and turning out the lights tends to feel a lot like gathering around a campfire. Especially since it almost always leads to staying up for another indefinite amount of hours, just talking and laughing instead of actually sleeping, which is the inevitable result of all that caffeine. Though there was always that one girl in middle school that was trying to sleep and would get mad and tell everyone, "Seriously guys, stop being so loud. I have to be up early for a soccer game tomorrow." Just for no one to take her seriously and keep being obnoxious anyway. To all of those that had a soccer game or have been sleep deprived by another, on behalf of the type that would usually stay up as late as possible, I'm sorry. But like, what? You went to a sleepover to actually sleep? Lame. You could all talk about something lighthearted and meaningful, but the sleeping bag pseudo campfire circle is also where some of the best gossip can surface. Even when there are no real plans to start talking about secrets or crushes or familial trauma, most of the time the conversation eventually declines into something more scandalous the later it gets. Like, being in close proximity in the dark makes everyone want to share some personal story for some reason. And if you didn't naturally feel like sharing, someone will probably still coerce you into talking anyway. But instead of calling it peer pressure, they call it truth or dare. How fun! Truth or dare is actually pretty harmless most of the time, but just like with the pillow fights, sometimes tween girls just take it a little too far and basically bully information out of you. Especially if you're so boring and pick truth, but then if you pick dare, they'll just dare you to tell a truth anyway. But it's usually not so bad, maybe just a little embarrassing. And playing along, or at least sitting around to watch everyone else play, is definitely part of slumber party law. From my tween-age experience, you could always count on at least one truth being, "Who do you like?" and one of the dares being, "Go eat a weird mix of condiments from the fridge." Maybe it doesn't sound all that exciting, but this was riveting stuff in middle school, let me tell you. For some extra help in coming up with decent truth or dare prompts, there are plenty of board game versions of the game that have pre-written stuff like, "What superpower would you like to have?" and "Whistle a tune?" I don't know, maybe our middle school dares weren't that bad after all. And if truth or dare still sounds a little too lighthearted and fun, then you might be ready for the age-old slumber party law tradition of sharing ghost stories. Something about the campfire vibes always tended to bring this spooky energy out of me and my friends when we were kids, and not just telling stories, but actively trying to scare everyone else at the party. Bonus points if someone hides and tries to jump scare everyone at the end, or if there's that one girl who takes it too far and wants to be the center of attention and pretends to get possessed for some reason. And since it is still a party, why not play some scary party games while you're at it? I don't know, they kinda count as games. And there are plenty of options, anything from Bloody Mary to drawing up your own Ouija board and convincing everyone that "I'm totally not moving it, OMG. Wait, ghost? Does Derek like me?" Was I the only one that was definitely moving it, but was also somehow totally convinced that it was real? I also have to love the 12-year-old's understanding of the spirit world, convinced that we not only contacted some random ghost, but that it would know or care who Derek from social studies was. Like I said, kids are so dumb. Of course, everyone knows the ultimate and most scary thing you can possibly do at a sleepover is go on the website. I'm not gonna name it because I really don't recommend it if it's still around, and especially not for children, but back in my day as middle schoolers, we just accepted the risk and kinda went on it because of the risk. If you know, you know. No matter how tired all of that gossiping and or fearing the unknown made you, along with whatever else you got up to earlier in the night, sleeping was not an option. According to slumber party law, pulling an all-nighter is kind of a requirement. Or more accurately, claiming that you'll stay up all night because "I drank so much soda, this caffeine rush is never going to wear off. Who even needs sleep?" only to eventually crash at like 3 a.m. at the latest. For an event based around the sole objective of sleeping, so much so that it's in the name of the thing, this law doesn't make a ton of sense, in retrospect. I guess the idea tends to be that you're having so much fun that you don't want the night to end, which is fine, but it's messed up that anyone who does fall asleep early will more than likely become a victim to at least one of 3 cartoonishly dumb pranks: permanent marker mustache, hand in warm water, or the old tickle and whipped cream combo. Even though it's a little mean, I love this part of sleepover culture because it didn't get much coverage by Big Sleepover, but was instead mostly a word of mouth passed down through the generations tradition. All of those doll lines and movies that I watched never really told me that I should pull pranks on my unsuspecting, slumbering friends, but I still ended up doing it because that was just slumber party law. Did you know that putting someone's hand in warm water while they're sleeping will make them pee? Well, I didn't until some girl whispered it to me at a middle school sleepover, and then I promptly also found out that it totally isn't true. Which is definitely for the best, because if it did work, then what? Someone has to clean it up, it'd probably start an argument, and then we all feel awkward because there's pee? I guess I never thought that far ahead, like is true for most tween-age things. But you know what? Even though it didn't work, it was equally as fun and thrilling just to attempt the prank, trying to manhandle someone's limp arm while holding in your laughter to not wake them up. The tickle and shaving cream method also never really worked, at least not in my experience, and I'm sure I tried many times. And drawing on someone with permanent marker is just mean. If you're gonna do it, at least use liquid eyeliner or something that can easily wash off. But hey, I'm not the fun police. Do whatever you want, I guess, and deal with the consequences as they come. The morning after a sleepover, the closest you'll get to a hangover at the ripe age of like 11. Whether you're one of the dummies who stayed up all night and only got a few hours of sleep, the poor girl with a 9 a.m. soccer game, or anyone else in between, waking up after a slumber party was an ordeal. Even if you did get some rest, sleeping on some girl's hardwood floor with only a strawberry shortcake sleeping bag is bound to make anyone a little bit cranky. Surprisingly though, it's not the sleep deprivation and grogginess that hits the hardest, it's the realization that the night of fun is over. After breakfast, hopefully something good, waffles, pancakes, Pop-Tarts, you might return to some of the games from the night before and try to recapture that energy, pick up where you left off, but attempting to squeeze in some quality cooking mama time in the 20 minutes before you get picked up to go home just doesn't feel the same. It might feel a little like morning. Morning in the morning? But it's a lot to process, though in the end it almost always results in a happy memory and a yearning to do it all over again as soon as possible at the next sleepover. As a 27-year-old old head, I'm pretty curious how much the sleepover traditions have changed since I was younger. Does Big Sleepover have as much influence on kids now as it did in the 2000s? Does anyone care about slumber party law and traditions, or are there no more rules and you can just do whatever you want? I can only go off of what I see on social media, which seems to be a lot of put-together, picturesque sleepovers. If they're fancy enough to have actual mattresses and little tents and stuff, then I have to assume they're also using fancy skincare instead of random mixtures of mayo and honey. But just because it might be different to a crunchy 2000s sleepover, that doesn't mean it's not fun. If anything, that's the whole point, that a sleepover is supposed to be personal and familiar and whatever you like to do. Please feel free to share your own wild or stupid sleepover stories, or what you're doing in new modern age slumber parties. Are we still messing with Ouija boards, marathoning the Twilight Saga? Does anyone have feathers in their pillows? I would love to know, and I hope that whatever weird stuff you may or may not get up to, that your next slumber party is a ton of fun. Hi, welcome to Jelly TV, where I shout out a video that I think deserves some love. I recommend watching Was iCarly the Web Show Actually Good by Mayus XP. I hope I said your name sort of correctly. iCarly was not just a TV show and a terrible reboot, but a web show within a show, and Mayus XP devolves into every clip of that web show from season 1. Not only is the editing great and the commentary super funny, but asking this question is hard-hitting journalism, an incredible concept that is the exact kind of meta content I love to explore. If you're also interested in diving into the in-universe lore of iCarly and its strange first season, then you should give this video a watch. A huge thank you to DE from ABQ, Clank, Bunny, Bunzo, Karis Desarun, Chumby, Half Fictional, Jacob Conleche, Kabluki Luno, Knuckleoso, Lojma Animal, Lou, Luna Stephenson, Mark Kent, Melted Patties, Nighttime Coral, Ollie E, Paper Sam, Pharmamax, Pixel Puppy, Shaples, Theodore Nicolawilius, Tish_Guy, and the rest of my patrons for supporting me. You are all officially listed in the Pajamarama Sleepover Bible now. May all your future sleepovers be restful and wholesome.